sweets? Happy? I'm delighted. It's like fairyland. The small creatures she had enamelled in bright primary colours were highlighted by the carefully placed lighting. She stepped closer and twirled around, looking at the lights as they twinkled, and was hard-pressed not to yell out in delight. "You've worked magic, Jeremy. Thank you so much." "My pleasure." He picked up his toolbox and crossed to the door. "I won't bill the company until I finish the whole room for your exhibition. Let me know when you want me to come back." After he left, Sienna wandered around, barely able to keep the smile off her face. The gallery looked very different from when she'd taken over as manager, with an option to purchase, only 4 weeks ago. The last email from a secretary at the company advised that any changes she made before the contract was signed must be approved and then would be billed out to the company. It had taken 3 weeks to get the approval to go ahead with the lighting, and she'd worried it wouldn't be complete before her exhibition. As soon as she'd received an email giving her the go-ahead, she'd called Jeremy to come in to do the work, and he turned up within an hour. There'd been no reply from her solicitor about the contract of sale when she'd checked her email at lunchtime. She glanced down at her watch. Hopefully it would settle next week, and then the gallery would be all hers, with the freedom to do as she wanted before her first exhibition. Having to get permission to make any change, no matter how small, was a pain in the proverbial. There was no time to check her email before she left for the restaurant. As usual, Sienna was running late, and she knew the girls would tease her about being late for her own birthday dinner. She grabbed her iPad and her bag from beneath the counter, and with one last satisfied smile at the beautifully lit display, she flicked the lights off and headed for the back door. Chapter 2. The waiter leaned over the table and the cork popped out of the champagne bottle, flying over the heads of the patrons in the noisy, crowded restaurant. Sienna laughed and leaned forward, holding her glass to catch the cascading bubbles. "Happy birthday!" Anna took Sienna's glass as wine frothed over the top onto the checked tablecloth. Georgie mopped at the damp cloth with her napkin and smiled at Sienna. "Happy birthday, sis." "You too, Georgie." Sienna grinned back, wondering for the millionth time how they could be so different. Even though they were fraternal twins, in 29 years she had never been able to find one glimmer of similarity between them. Looks, personality, interests, or attitudes. About the only thing they shared was their birthday. "So, Machu Picchu is still the plan for next year's Big 30? Anna, their best friend since primary school up the mountain at Malini, sipped her wine. Sienna and Georgie had always promised themselves a special trip for their 30th birthday, even if they were married with kids. But that hadn't happened for either of them, intentionally for Sienna, and not so intentionally for Georgie. Sienna shook her head and looked across at her twin. Georgie was leaning into her latest boyfriend, Cal, or something. Kel? She couldn't keep up with the men in Georgie's life. Her sister always tried so hard to find Mr. Right. Each time a guy sensed Georgie was after the wedding dress dream, he took off and she was left nursing another broken heart. She should know by now relationships rarely work out, and she needs to toughen up, Sienna thought, but kept her thoughts to herself. Georgie caught her eye and smiled. "No, Sienna will be too busy. Are you going to tell us your news, sis?" Sienna rose to her feet and tapped her glass with a spoon, but the hum of noise from the other patrons in Fish Divine overlooking the beach at Noosa covered the sound. She sat back down with a grin and waited until she had the attention of the small group.